Welcome back. This is Sandy with Sandy's Organized Chaos, and today we're going to be doing a tricolor tumbler with peonies and polka dots. As always, I'll make sure to put everything that I used today down in the description box below so that way you guys can shop those items if you would like to. And if you're new to my channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any more tutorials, products, vlogs, all kinds of stuff I have coming your way. So let's wake up, prep those tumblers, and slay all day. Let's do this. I'm starting out with a tumbler that I've already prepped and painted and all that. I like to do big groupings of my tumblers at one time so that way they're kind of ready to go on a whim when I'm ready to apply my designs to them. So that's why it's painted white. You obviously don't need to have yours painted white because we're going to be painting over it anyways. Now here I am just mapping out where I want my stripes to start. I'm using a 2-inch painter's tape, which is really going to help out map out or block out those areas that we want to have stripes on. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to stand my tumbler up straight on its bottom on my table, and I'm going to find some items where I want the tape to start. And I used my shakers at first, but in the end I ended up using my cup of water over there. As you see, it was the perfect height for making that line so that way I could apply my tape nice and straight. I also seen other people use Legos, which is a really great idea. I don't have any Legos on hand, surprisingly, with all the kids I have running around here, but I have also seen people use Legos to do this as well. You just want to take a pencil and just draw a nice perfect circle so that way when we go to apply our tape here in a second, you'll know where to go all the way around so that way it's nice and even. So after I get all my stuff out of the way there's my line right there. After I get all my stuff out of the way, I'm going to take my tape, and since it's already 2 inches wide, that's exactly how thick of a band I would like around the middle, so it's perfect. I don't have to add any more tape to it or anything. I'm just going to follow that guideline all the way around my tumbler. Now, I am not working on a perfectly straight tumbler, so I just want to make sure that my top line is nice and tight around the top, and then all I do is just come back through and just kind of scrunch everything up around the bottom. It'll be just fine. There's nothing that the pinstriping can't hide if the line isn't perfectly straight. Now that that's all taped up, I'm going to come through and I'm going to block off the bottom as well because we don't want the color that's going to be on the top. So, and it's already white, so I don't have to worry about painting that either. But if you do need to paint that white, then again, you're going to have to obviously make sure that you come back through and block everything off so that way you can paint the white on as well. Now the glitters that I'm using today are going to be true to color metallics, so I want to make sure that my bases are colored kind of coordinatingly to those colors. So the top there is going to be that Vintage Blush by Rust-Oleum, and here it is. I let that dry probably for about 30 minutes. Now I'm going to come back through and I'm going to tape off my Vintage Blush because I want to paint the middle a separate color. And because that Vintage Blush is so fresh on my tumbler, I like to take my tape and I stick it down to a piece of fabric. Here I'm showing you on a towel. Typically I do it on my shirt, but I wanted you guys to be able to see what I was doing. I do that so that way that tape is not so sticky. Because if you put that tape on a freshly painted tumbler, you run the risk of your paint peeling up once you go to peel that tape back, and we don't want that. And once I have that fully taped off, I'm going to take it outside and I'm going to give it a nice spray painting of my Silver Lilac by Rust-Oleum. Now you guys could obviously do acrylic paints if you don't feel like doing all this spray painting. So it is completely up to you on how you guys want to color your tumbler before your glitter. Now, you guys know I am all about the epoxy method. I absolutely love the epoxy method, but today I'm actually going to be using my Mod Podge. I have a little bowl of water over there. I have my Mod Podge, and the glitters that I'm going to be using today are a rose gold, which is called Grace, orchid, which is a beautiful purple color, and then of course my white, which is called Pinnacle. Now these colors you can purchase at www.socglitters.com at my glitter shop if you would like to, but if not, please feel free to use any glitters you already have on hand. I'm just using a basic flat brush to apply my Mod Podge, so you guys can use a little foam brush if you'd like. However you guys like to apply it is completely up to you as well. Now this first round, because I'm going to be doing 2 rounds of the glitter, I'm going to show you guys exactly how I do that. This first round, I'm just going to apply a very thin layer. I'm not going to do too thick, so that way it gives enough time to be able to dry, and we can come back through and apply that second layer pretty quick after this is dry. You just want to move very quickly because Mod Podge does have a tendency to dry very quick, and you just want to make sure that your lines are as straight as possible and there's not too many peaks and valleys in that glue as well, or it will show through once you apply that glitter. So now that I have my Mod Podge all applied, I'm going to go ahead and load up my beautiful Grace glitter here. Now I'm going to simply tap that off right onto my paper so that way all that extra glitter kind of comes off, because we don't want any extra glitter on there. And you may be saying to yourself, there's a bunch of extra glitter around the middle. How are you going to do that? Very simple. You're going to take your little chip brush and you're just going to sweep away very carefully all that extra glitter, and it's going to come right off. That's all I use my little chip brush for, just for sweeping off my hand, for sweeping off my tumblers. That's it. That's all you want to use it for, nothing else. I have one specifically just for my wood grain tumblers, and I have one specifically just for wiping off glitter. Now we're going to go ahead and move on to that purple color right in the middle. Again, just doing the same thing. You want to be very careful getting your brush right up against your glitter there and just moving around very, very carefully, just so that we do the stripe right around the middle. For those of you that are new and don't understand how the purple is not going to mix with the rose gold at the top, it's going to be okay. As long as your glue was perfectly covered by your glitter, the other glitter that you apply will not stick to the other glitter. Now you may get some purple specks that are up there that might look like they're stuck down, but they're not. When we come through and do our second layer of glitter, I'll show you guys how you just sweep it away and it's just gonna come right off. No worries. Now that my purple is applied, I did the same thing where I kind of knocked down onto my paper to kind of get any little extra glitters off of it. Then I'm going to come through with my chip brush and sweep away my white area. And then we're going to move on to the white and do the same exact process where we apply the glue. Then we're going to apply our glitter, and then we're going to let that completely dry. Again, for those of you that are new, when you're using Mod Podge, you have to make sure that it is completely dry before you move on to any type of epoxy. You want to make sure that it sits for quite a while, depending on how much Mod Podge you use. I mean, if you're just using thin layers of it, probably only needs to sit for about an hour or two. But if you're using thicker portions of Mod Podge, which we're going to do the second round to kind of make sure everything is nice and covered, you're going to want to let it sit almost for a full day before you apply your epoxy, because if you do not, then you run the chance of it not being fully dry and it will turn your epoxy a milky color. So here I am just kind of cleaning up, and now that that is nice and dry, we're going to take our chip brush and we're going to sweep away any excess glitter, which is going to really help when we apply that second coat of Mod Podge over top, so that way our brush doesn't get all gunked up with any extra glitters that might be not stuck down to our tumbler and want to get onto our brush. Now I know you guys seen earlier, you were probably wondering why I put my brush into my water before I dip it down into my Mod Podge, and that's just to kind of help thin it out a little bit, especially when you go to do the second layer of Mod Podge over top to apply another coat of glitter over top. It really kind of thins it down and it makes it not dry as fast, so that way you have time to do what you need to do before you apply your glitter. So I'm going to go ahead and just do the same thing where I apply my Mod Podge. I'm going to put my glitter down over that. I'm going to make sure that there's no extra little glitters on the other colors. I'm going to do the same thing as before. I'm going to take my chip brush, sweep anything away that might be stuck to it. Then I'm going to move on to that next color as well. And I'm just going to completely do that process. And each step of the way, I make sure that I kind of rinse my brush off just a little bit, just in case any other little colors were on my brush, and fully do up my Mod Podge around the middle here, apply my purple. Then I'm going to make sure that I sweep anything off that might be on there. Here I am. I'm going to show you guys a little bit more up close. You just want to take your brush, sweep all those little particles out of there. It comes right off. And again, after you have this fully covered and your second coat of glitter, you're going to want to let that sit for a while because we added a lot of extra epoxy this round. So I let mine sit overnight because I did mine at night. I typically start my projects in the morning and then I'll kind of finish up at night if I need to, and I'll work on things the next morning. So I'm going to go ahead and rinse my brush off, get my white applied, and I'm going to come back the next day and apply a coat of epoxy over top. Now here it is the next morning. I let it fully dry so that way my epoxy doesn't turn milky, because that's no good. We don't want that. That would not be fun at all after all this hard work, right? And to fully make sure that these colors are not going to bleed into each other, even though we brushed it off and all that stuff, I gave it a nice coating of my gloss clear coat. I didn't use semi-gloss. I used gloss clear coat by Rust-Oleum. And what I do before I apply my epoxy is I take my gloved hand and I rub it over it. And if there are no signs of glitter on my glove, we are good to go. But if I see glitter on my glove, I will go back and do the same process where I apply another coat of that semi-gloss, let that dry fully. Then I'm going to apply my epoxy here. I'm actually using my quick coat epoxy so that way we can apply the decals later in the day. And you obviously want to make sure over your raw glitter, because this is where those micro bubbles start to arise as over your raw glitter. You want to make sure that you hit it up really good with your torch, just really fast sweep motions with your torch to kind of pop any of those little micro bubbles that might be under there, stuck under the glitter, under the raw glitters and stuff like that. Now, because I live where it's pretty much summer all year long, when I use my quick coat, I can pretty much apply my vinyls within 5 to 6 hours after putting on my epoxy. It might be different for you, so just make sure that you check and make sure your tumbler is not sticky at all before you apply your vinyls. All right, now we're ready to apply our vinyls. Now I found these cute decals on Etsy. I'll make sure obviously to put it down below where I got them because they are adorable. And I want you guys to be able to do this as well. I'm just gonna sit here and weed those things. Weeding is just, oh my goodness, I don't know. Anyways, I'm just using a basic white vinyl. And what I do whenever I do these decals is I'll do up an entire sheet of my decals and I'll save whatever I don't use for later, for when I want to do more tumblers of the same design. It's a great way to kind of just make sure you have things on hand, especially if those tumblers sell in your shop. And of course, before I apply my decals, I'm going to do my basic cleanup where I clean up my rim. I give it a little bit of a sanding if it needs it, then it's ready to have its decals applied. Now, typically I wouldn't do this, but I didn't think about it when I did it, but I just apply my decals randomly throughout my tumbler, and then I'm going to come back through and kind of trim off any extra and throw that extra away. But if I still had my shop open and I was thinking about it, I would have just cut those decals in half because I wanted them to look like they were half on the cup or half in that color and half not in that color. So I would suggest that you kind of cut those decals in half. Then you can save those other half decals for other tumblers that you would like to do. But if you do like me, all you have to do is come back through and just go right around, right where that purple meets the rose gold, and just trim and peel your vinyls back. And once you have that all trimmed up, we'll be ready to move on to those other vinyls. Now, like I said earlier, I just use a basic white vinyl for the peony part, but for the stripes or the pinstriping and for the polka dots, I'm going to be using this vinyl that is textured metallic, and that's by Cricut. I just purchased that right at Michael's. And the width of my bands that I'm doing here are 0.069, and I made sure they were about 9 inches long, and it fit perfectly around the center of my tumbler here. So I'm just going to apply those really quick. Now, I don't think I mentioned this earlier, but I am working on a 20-ounce skinny tumbler, and those measurements worked out perfectly for this size. And the color that I'm actually using is the pale gold, because I purchased the sampler pack. So if you guys were wondering, it's just like the pale gold, and I thought it went really well with my color scheme. I did the polka dots in that same color as I did my bands. I just thought, again, it went very nicely with it, but of course you guys can do however you would like to do. And I made sure that my circles were 0.597 inches. That's how big I made them. Now, when I went to apply them, I just did it very abstractly. I just kind of offset them one off of each other, so that way they were just kind of almost made a triangle shape. I mean, it doesn't matter. However you guys want to do it, it's completely up to you. And I know you guys got this. And of course, you don't want to forget your bottom, so I just kind of put one in the middle and then just put 4 around it. That's all I did. It's as easy as that. Now on this round, if you guys needed to add any type of personalization, like a name or a monogram or initial or anything like that, you want to go ahead and do it now as well. And then you want to go ahead and apply 2 last finishing coats of epoxy, making sure that you hit it up really good with your torch once you're all done, so that way you get all those micro bubbles off your tumbler. And she is good to go. Whether you take this design and duplicate it as is, or you take it and let it inspire you to create something that is completely your own, I hope that you guys had a lot of fun watching this tutorial today. Again, if you're new to my channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and I will see you guys next time.